John Kirby, I watched my skilled colleague Katie Tur try to get some information out of you about these two hostages that have reportedly been released. I know you're being tight-lipped for all sorts of strategic and humanitarian reasons, but is there anything you can share with us?
Not right now, unfortunately, Nicole. We're still trying to validate these reports. So, look, we hope it's accurate. We hope that that more hostages have been released here. That would be a great thing, but we just aren't able to validate those reports at this time.
What would it say? What would it say if there are two more hostages being released, and if, as news accounts suggest, it's for humanitarian reasons? What would you glean from that?
Well, the first thing is we hope that it's a trend of more releases. I mean, Hamas has just released everybody. We hope that this means that there's a process in place to get more hostages back with their families as appropriate. Now, whether, and I've seen this thesis that, you know, Hamas is doing this to sort of buy time to forestall some sort of ground incursion. I won't speak for the Israelis or what they will or won't do on the battlefield. We don't think that any one more day should go with any hostages being held by Hamas. They should all be released immediately.
I had a chance to interview an individual from the Red Cross that is reportedly one of the folks involved in helping to free the hostages, as is Qatar. What can you tell us about the team that is working on these efforts?
Well, I'm going to be real careful about the details because we still have hostages we want to get out, and we don't want to put too much out there in the public domain lest we torpedo our chances of success. But we are talking robustly with partners in the region who have communications and access to Hamas that might help facilitate the kinds of transfers that we want. So all that's going on very, very actively. We know we still have some Americans that are being held hostage by Hamas, and we're working very diligently to get them out. One day, hopefully, you know, when we get them all out, we'll be able to sort of lay out for everybody exactly how we did that. But the energy is being applied very, very stringently right now.
We are, in TV language, screwing the wings on at 35,000 feet. So I just want to share with you what I'm about to put on the screen. This is some video from Egyptian television of the two hostages reportedly just released, Yoheved Lifshitz and Nurit Ishaq. Of course, if this is all verified and verifiable, John Kirby, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful news for the families, the community members, the loved ones, and also clearly the beginning of unraveling the trauma that these two individuals have been through.
Look, they've been through a nightmare, and they're gonna need proper medical care right away, and they're probably gonna need a chance to decompress and maybe even some mental health care as well, given what they've been through. I think we all need to make sure that they have the time and space to do that. I sure hope that all that's validated and verified, and that they have actually been released. That's a terrific thing for them and their families.
I want to ask you about a couple other developments. The New York Times has issued an editor's note about a story you came on and talked to us about a couple times. It was the claim by Hamas that Israel had struck that hospital. I believe before President Joe Biden departed for Israel, U.S. intelligence, either before he left or soon after he took off, was able to confirm or assess that the hospital, the tragic loss of life there, was caused by a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket launch. Two more countries' intelligence agencies over the weekend confirmed that, the agencies of Canada and France. And the New York Times today issuing an editor's note explaining that, one, that claim by Hamas was given disproportionate weight and influence in their coverage in the New York Times editor's view, and two, an acknowledgement of the impact of information in this war. What do you think of that?
I think it's a commendable effort by the New York Times to do that. I think that that shows how seriously they take their obligations in reporting news and information, particularly in fast-breaking events. And again, we find that commendable. As I think you and I talked about last week, when things are moving fast like this, it really is important to not get out ahead of things, not talk about things before you know them. Take a breath, take a knee, make sure that you got the information right before you contextualize it, because a group like Hamas very much understands the disinformation war, Nicole. They understand the power of propaganda. They understand that it is not just a battle of bullets and bombs here that they're fighting, that it is a battle of the narrative. And if they can win the public narrative, they can have strategic success. And we just got to make sure we don't give that space to them, that we don't cede that territory. And if that means being a little slower and a little bit more careful, it's better for everybody, that the truth can come out and facts can be represented appropriately.
I think there's an assessment among some that Hamas is doing, you know, that the propaganda maybe is getting around the world faster than the truth. What do you think of that?
Well, Mark Twain said it best, you know, way back in the 1880s, the truth can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still tying on its shoes. I think that, you know, in today's environment, we can't even find our shoes before that lie is traveling halfway around the world. And I think that's important for us to recognize, that we shouldn't rush to judgment. We shouldn't try to get out ahead of it. Now, look, I'll say this. One, you can beat a lie to the punch if you know it's coming. And you've seen that from this administration since the early days of the Ukrainian conflict, that when we can get information and declassify it and put it into the public realm and get ahead of the adversary, we've been able to do that. That's important. Number two, maybe you can't beat that lie to the punch. Maybe you can't get it before it's traveled halfway around the world, but you can put out imagery, you can put out evidence, you can put out facts to dispute it. And you just got to keep at that. That is, it can't be one and done. You got to keep doing it over and over and over again to overwhelm that lie. And that's what we're focused on here.
Well, and I know that's some of probably what keeps you marching out to the North Lawn to talk to people like me, and we appreciate that. I want to ask you about something we've spent a good deal of time on, and that's the increase in the threat assessment here at home. What can you tell us about that?
We're working very, very closely here at the administration at the federal level with state and local authorities to really try to be able to identify and disrupt any threats, any hate-filled crime threats throughout the country. And that's whether it's anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, threats to the Palestinian American population, the Arab American population. We're focused on this really, really in a sharp, sharp way. And again, really coordinating with state and local authorities as best we can so that people can worship, can recreate, can work in safety and security, that there's no spillover effects from this conflict between Israel and Hamas. That's a real priority for the president.
John Kirby, I can only imagine what your phone looks like after spending all the time talking to Katie and me, and I know you had other interviews before that. We'll let you go, but thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Good to be with you, Nicole, as always. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Lederman, I'm coming to you. Please tell us your latest understanding and what you have reportable about the release of 2 hostages today by Hamas.
Well, here's what we know, Nicole. We know that Hamas has put out a statement from a spokesperson saying that they had released those 2 women. They named the women. And I've spoke to an Israeli official who confirmed that those are the names of 2 women who have now been released. We know that Hamas says that they decided to release these women on humanitarian grounds, despite the fact that they say that Israel had refused to accept hostages back. Now, Israel's government has said that is mendacious propaganda, that it is nonsense. But we're also learning a little bit more about how this release was carried out, with the Red Cross putting out a statement saying that just like with those release of those 2 Americans a few days ago, that they were directly involved and that due to their neutral capacity, they were able to facilitate releasing those women from Hamas custody over to the border. Now, what we don't know is exactly where those women are right now and what condition they are in. There has been reporting from Egyptian state media that they have arrived at the Rafah border crossing, but that is a border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. And so from there, they would need to somehow get to Israel. There is a border crossing about 6 miles away from there between Israel and Egypt, which could potentially be one route for them to get into Israel. And from there, we would expect the Israeli military to bring them to be reunited with family members to undergo psychological and medical evaluations. As you pointed out, we've had a source who spoke to one of our colleagues saying that at least one of these women had some health issues that needed to be urgently addressed. And so that will be a big priority. But another big priority, of course, will be to try to see what intelligence these women may have witnessed during their more than 2 weeks in captivity about how Hamas is holding hostages, where they're holding them, what the schedule for guards that are controlling them are, whether they're being held along with other hostages, any information that could be useful to Israel as it tries to free the remaining approximately 200 hostages believed to be held in the Gaza Strip, including, according to John Kirby earlier in the day 10 American citizens. We've also heard in the last half hour or so from a family representative for one of those two women saying that they had confirmed that she had been released. They're obviously very desperate to see their loved ones in good health and see that they have actually safely made it to Israeli territory. But a big question going forward, Nicole, is going to be why exactly did Hamas release these two women now, and whether they're going to release even more civilian hostages in the days ahead. Hamas has said they are willing to release all of their civilian hostages if Israel would simply agree to a ceasefire, would stop airstrikes over the Gaza Strip. So far, Israel has said that is not something they are considering, but NBC News reporting that it is one of the reasons the U.S. Is urging Israel at this time to hold off on that ground incursion, to pump the brakes a bit, because of the possibility that it could be a more fruitful way to get some of the remaining hostages in the Gaza Strip freed, Nicole.